Moses, Moses, do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. For more than 3,000 years, the ancient Egyptian language echoed through temples, palaces, and bustling cities along the Nile. It was the language of priests, kings, farmers, and scribes. But could it also have been the language of God? The Hebrew scriptures tell us that the Israelites lived in Egypt for centuries, and that their greatest prophet, Moses, was born, raised, educated, and culturally shaped within Egypt. So when the Creator first spoke to Moses in the burning bush, what language did he use? Today, we explore one of the most intriguing questions in biblical history. Did God speak ancient Egyptian? Hebrews in Egypt. According to the book of Exodus, the Hebrews lived in Egypt for 400 years. During this long period, they adopted Egyptian customs, names, and language. Moses himself was raised in the royal household. Exodus tells us, "And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water." Raised in a palace, Moses would have learned the Egyptian royal dialect, the courtly language of officials, scribal writing systems like hieratic or possibly Proto-Sinaitic, and the culture, etiquette, and worldview of elite Egypt. The biblical book of Acts confirmed this, saying, "And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds." This means that before anything else, Moses was culturally and linguistically Egyptian. Moses in exile. After killing an Egyptian during a dispute, Moses fled and settled in Midian. There, something extraordinary happened. While tending sheep near Mount Horeb, Moses encountered a burning bush, a flame that burned but did not consume. And from the fire, God spoke to him directly. What language did God speak? Exodus chapter 3 describes Moses' conversation with God. Not a vision, not a dream, not a message through an angel, but direct speech. God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer." God said, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." This raises a question. What language did Moses understand God speaking? At this point in history, Moses' mother tongue from a childhood would have been Egyptian. He would have spoken Egyptian to neighbors, friends, officials, and even Pharaoh. The Israelites in Egypt were culturally assimilated, and the Hebrew language, as known today, did not yet exist. Most scholars agree that the linguistic ancestor of Biblical Hebrew, Canaanite Northwest Semitic, emerged much later, around the Iron Age, not during Moses' lifetime. So if Moses had no Hebrew language yet, what language did God use to speak to him? The only language Moses would have fully mastered at the time was ancient Egyptian. The divine name and Egyptian context. When Moses asked God his name, the answer came, "Eheya Asher Eheya, I am that I am." This phrase is preserved in Hebrew much later, suggesting that early Israelites translated an original expression into the later written language. Jewish scholars like Rabbi Saadaya Gaon and Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, commonly known as Maimonides, noted that the Torah frequently preserves older expressions, that they were translated centuries after they were first spoken. Christian scholars such as William F. Albright, Kenneth Kitchen, and James Hofmeyr argue that the early Israelites likely used a Semitic dialect influenced heavily by Egyptian vocabulary. Hebrew words borrowed from ancient Egyptian. Scholars widely agree that the Hebrew Bible preserves a significant number of ancient Egyptian loanwords, reflecting the extended period during which the Israelites lived in Egypt, as described in the biblical narratives. These borrowed terms appear in categories such as personal names, religious, ritual, and cultural terms, government and social titles, place names and ethnic terms. Clear examples: Musha, Moses in English, from the Egyptian word mes or mos, meaning born of or a child of a deity, seen in names like Thutmose, Ahmos, Ramesses. Pharaoh, Pharaoh in English, directly derived from the Egyptian term Per'a, meaning great house, originally the name of the royal palace and later the title for the king himself. The exact Egyptian form appears in inscriptions as early as the Old Kingdom, and its adoption into Hebrew demonstrates a direct political and cultural connection. Phinehas, a grandson of Aaron and the great-nephew of Moses. Phinehas in English, from the Egyptian word Pa-Nehasi, meaning the Nubian or the dark-skinned one. Potiphar, the captain of the guard for a pharaoh, who is said to have purchased Joseph as a slave, from the Egyptian word Pudifara, meaning he whom Ra gave. Asnat, Joseph's wife, Azinath in English, from the Egyptian word Asinith, meaning she belongs to Neith, one of the earliest Egyptian goddesses. Tiva, ark or basket in English, from the Egyptian word Tbet, meaning box, chest, container. It was used for Noah's ark and Moses' basket. Gomi, papyrus or reeds in English, from the Egyptian word Kam, which means reed or papyrus plant. Shesh, linen in English, from the Egyptian word Shesh, meaning fine linen, a major Egyptian export. Khartoum, magician in English, from the Egyptian word Khartam, meaning chief ritualist, lector priest, magician. Mencha, offering or gift in English, from the Egyptian word Mnech, which means offering. Kush, from the Egyptian word Kosh, meaning Nubia. This linguistic evidence strongly supports the idea that early Israelites lived for generations in Egypt and absorbed Egyptian culture and vocabulary. Moses, the only man God spoke to face to face. The book of Numbers makes a rare and bold claim. With him I speak face to face, plainly, and not in riddles. Jewish commentators such as Rashi and Ibn Ezra emphasize the uniqueness of this direct communication. Christian scholars, from Origen to Augustine, teach that no prophet before or after Moses received God's word so directly. If the communication was direct, speech, not symbolic revelation, the language used must have been one Moses understood perfectly, and that language was Egyptian. What about the Ten Commandments? The Ten Commandments were written by God Himself on stone tablets. Exodus says, when the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, He gave him the 2 tablets of the covenant law, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. but what script was used? This is one of the most debated questions in biblical scholarship. Possible options include 1. Egyptian hieroglyphs or hieratic. Some scholars propose that Moses, trained in palace literacy, may have carved or read commands written in an Egyptian script. Proto-Sinaitic script. Many modern academics believe the earliest alphabetic script, Proto-Sinaitic or Proto-Canaanite, was developed in Sinai under Egyptian rule. It used simplified phonetic signs derived from Egyptian hieroglyphs. Moses and the Israelites living in Sinai could have used this emerging alphabet. 3. Later Hebrew translation. Jewish scholars like Rabbi Moses ben Nachman, known as Ramban or Nachmanides, argued that the Torah we have today is in a later Hebrew script, not the original form Moses wrote. This agrees with modern critics, who believe the Torah was edited and standardized centuries after Moses. Thus, the original Ten Commandments may not have been written in Hebrew at all, but in an earlier Semitic Egyptian hybrid script. The Torah written by Moses. Tradition holds that Moses wrote the Torah by hand, but in what language? Jewish traditional view. Moses wrote in a script called Kitav Ivri, an early Semitic alphabet. Hebrew language in the Torah is considered divinely inspired, even if not the everyday language of Moses. Christian traditional view. The Torah was written in Hebrew, though not necessarily the later standardized Hebrew of the Kingdom of Judah. Many church fathers believed Moses used an older Proto-Semitic form. Modern academic view. The Torah was composed over centuries. Its Hebrew reflects an Iron Age language, not the Bronze Age of Moses. Early Israelite language was influenced heavily by Egyptian speech and culture. Scholars like Israel Finkelstein and Nadav Naaman argue that the Exodus story was written centuries later and reflects memory, not contemporary language. They say the narrative shows knowledge of Egyptian culture, but not necessarily Egyptian speech by God. If modern linguistics is correct, then the Hebrew text we have today is a later translation or reduction of much older traditions. Conclusion. Did God speak Egyptian? So what language did God speak to Moses? The truth is, the Bible does not explicitly tell us, but historical, linguistic, and cultural clues point strongly toward one conclusion. At that early time, Moses' only fluent language was Egyptian. The Israelites lived in Egypt for centuries. Moses was raised Egyptian. He spoke Egyptian to friends, family, and Pharaoh. And when God spoke to him directly, face to face, God used a language Moses understood perfectly. Whether the Ten Commandments were written in Egyptian script, Proto-Sinaitic, or an early Semitic alphabet remains debated. But one thing is clear: Egypt shaped not only Moses, but the very foundations of the Israelite faith. And perhaps, in the flames of the burning bush, the voice of God echoed in the ancient Egyptian tongue. In the sands of Egypt lie not only the secrets of pharaohs and kings, but possibly the first spoken words of God to Moses, the greatest prophet of the Hebrews.